Hi there. I've just been watching Stefan Hollier's fantastic lecture on C.J. Jung and the Gnostic mythos. Um, it's fantastic kind of revelations, and he hit me, you know, because he said that Jung describes an alchemical process by which a personality can be reintegrated. Basically, can go from separation to wholeness, or from, I suppose, the word be fractured self to a whole self. And this would apply to all of us. And I suddenly thought, about Plato's Phaedrus, I think it is, and these. Well, there's only two horses actually in his model, but there's four horses, and there could be more. Each of these horses represents a thought, and if your thoughts are all pulling in different directions, then obviously the chariot can't go anywhere. But if one of the horses pulls harder on a temporary basis, then it can go short distance, and then the other horses start to pull equally, and then all forward momentum stops. And basically, our consciousness, well, my consciousness at least, is split between these four horses, and between Phaedrus's white horse and dark horse. And the dark horse is pulling you towards vice, and the white horse is pulling you towards virtue. But I think it's even more complicated than that, actually, although that's a good model. But anyway, in my model, based on Plato's model, you can't go anywhere. If you're the consciousness of the charioteer, you're full of dismay because your mind can't ever go forward. It's just stuck between forces. It's like a hung parliament. It can't do anything. It's all pulling in different directions. And I decided that also, based on what Jung and Freud were talking about, I think I have a theory that, at some point in one's childhood, or recent past, or childhood past, something happened which split your mind apart, which created these two opposing forces, two or more opposing forces, split your personality apart, and this childhood experience created this situation, whereby your thoughts are literally pulling apart. And I've shown it here as well. Each one of these arrows, which is pointing outwards, represents a stream of consciousness, and there's various streams of consciousness, or more likely torrents of consciousness, and they're all pulling in different directions, so that your mind is completely and utterly disparate, fractured, if you like. And this is what I encounter within my own self when I go. I seem like I'm a unity. It's like, to all the world, it seems like I have one consciousness. I'm talking to my friends or family, or people online. It seems like I'm actually speaking with one consciousness. But when I actually look within myself, I find that, like in Ulysses, the novel Ulysses, I'm actually streams of consciousness all pulling in different directions. And there's all stuff. A lot of the stuff is, if I had done something differently in the past, something else would have happened, in a sort of J.M. Barrie, Dear Brutus kind of way. And I keep on regretting the past, and frustrated with the present, and fearful of the future, of course, as I said before. But all this fear, all this regret, all this frustration is caused really by all these different patterns of thought, all going in different directions. I'm literally falling apart. And it's only the Prozac and the Tegretol, which is making me bear this situation. It's not that the pharmaceutical drugs have stopped this. They haven't at all. They've just made me stronger within myself to stand, being torn apart by all these conflicting forces. So the idea, basically, as I understand it, the idea of Gnosis, or one of the objectives of Gnosis, is to bring all your thoughts back, to try to reach the center point, to try and, instead of your thoughts, instead of your consciousness being with all these horses, you've got to try and bring your consciousness back to the charioteer, and then the charioteer can bring all these horses together and drive the chariot forward on the basis of reining in all the particular horses that will give the carriage forward momentum. You see, so I'm thinking to myself, I'm what I need to do is to bring my awareness, because it's my awareness that's aware of all these conflicting forces, conflicting thoughts. So it's not that I bring the thoughts together. It's like I bring my awareness to this particular point in this middle of the circle here, and then my thoughts, just become aware of one thought, which is the essence of my being, and this will drive the carriage forwards. Because at the moment, the carriage of my mind can't be driven forwards. My life can't go forwards because of all the conflicting elements within it. But that's because my awareness is focused on the fractured side of my personality, whereas I need to find some way of centering my awareness in the essence of my being, and that will bring all my thoughts to me. And the horses will then pull together instead of pulling apart, if you see what I mean. But of course, some people will say, you need to kind of express the original trauma that led you to split your mind up into all these different factions, if you like. It wasn't just two; it was like more than two. It was like many, many different, budding offs of my mind. And of course, Jung was also very interested and thought that the key to all this was alchemy, which as you know, it's the circle, and then there's a square, and then there's a triangle, then there's a circle. I think that somehow there's a method. I mean, apart from going to Freudian, which I can't afford, and I can't afford any psychology really. So this has all got to be my own DIY stuff. I've got to do it myself. There's no one else can do it for me really, which is true anyway. You can only do this yourself. Somehow, I've got to draw my consciousness into, first of all, a circle, and then my awareness goes into this square, and then it goes into this triangle, then it goes into the circle, and then it brings the bride and the bridegroom together, and then I achieve this kind of oneness, and then my consciousness will be at the charioteer level of consciousness instead of all these disparate horses, you see. And then the charioteer can grab the reins and pull the horses together, and create integration, and then create forward movement. But I mean, it's like when I think about my music, I've got hundreds and hundreds of themes which will never be finished. They've all started and they won't finish. And some of them are kind of half finished, and some of them are three-quarters finished, and a very, very few of them seem to be finished, but are not actually polished. And then just a couple are polished and finished, and that's the end of it. But I think I start things and I never finish anything, but because it's still there. I start things, I don't finish things, but they've still got a momentum. And I've started so much in my life. I've started so many thoughts, but I can't finish any of them, that they're all tearing me to pieces, you see. So I'm literally being torn apart by my consciousness. And of course, as I say, the Prozac and Tegretol, they only just keep me, from literally, not imploding, but exploding, I suppose, literally. And exploding into into complete NASA madness, really, which I often have done. I do get sort of manic, and then I can't think at all, really. But whether or not some chaos magicians, you see, they say you should just continue the chaotic process. I mean, they wouldn't take any pharmaceuticals. They would just allow themselves to completely fall apart. But I don't know where that would end, you see. I think that would end in total chaos and darkness. And it seems to me that every myth that ever was, including right back to the Babylonians, has talked about conquering the chaos and the darkness and bringing it all together to a single point, and which I would have thought would be the logical thing to do, really, rather than just let everything just fall apart more and more and more. Um, so I think that the great work, basically, as far as on this earth anyway, is try to complete the alchemical process. But then I also think that you need the Holy Grail. You need, to me, the Holy Grail means it's a kind of symbol of oneness, I suppose. It's a symbol of being together, of sort of bringing all my disparate thoughts together. It's a sort of focal point, I suppose. And it's also kind of full of blessings, and the energy comes out of it. Um, so I'm sort of getting literal spiritual healing, I suppose, really, as a result of focusing on the Holy Grail itself, and that's what the Holy Grail means to me. You see, um, so whether or not I can ever attain this gnosis, I'm not sure. I can certainly see what needs to be done, but doing it, of course, is another. Talking about it is one thing, but doing it is quite another thing. And I doubt that you'll be able to see me doing it online through YouTube, because making these videos is obviously a distraction in itself, and I have to sort of go into introspection and go into myself and actually do the work. I can't just do the work and show you at the same time. I'm not a chef that can do the cooking and be on camera at the same time, showing you how to do the cooking. I don't think it's like that, really. I wish it was like that, but I don't think it can be. I can't make the cake and be on camera showing you how to make the cake. I can either make the cake or not make the cake. Do you know what I mean? And I can sort of talk about making cakes in theory, but when I actually get in the kitchen, I can't have the camera, over my shoulder, because that's just a distraction to me, and that leads to narcissism, and I just can't do it. Don't know how these chefs do it on TV, really. They're pretty amazing people. They must be very. Again, you see, their consciousness is right on the charioteer. So when they go into the kitchen, the lights are on, the cameras are on. Their horses are pulling together, and they're keeping it together whilst the TV show is running. You see, whereas I just fall apart completely. You see. So anyway, so I thought that kind of hopefully. Anyway, I was certainly very inspired by Stefan Hollier's video, and I put a link to that video down below in the description.